Welcome everyone. The webinar will begin shortly and will be recorded. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR, and on Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. Additionally, we invite you to follow us on LinkedIn at Campaign for GLR. Please use hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learned from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Once again, we would love to connect. So on Facebook, like the page Campaign for GLR. On Twitter, follow the account at Reading by Third. And on LinkedIn, follow us at Campaign for GLR. Okay, welcome again, everyone, to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself. So please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. When responding, be sure to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage you to post any questions that you may have during the conversation into the Q&A box. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed on our Facebook page, and a link to the recording, as well as all resources that you see shared in the chat box, will be compiled and shared in a follow-up email to all webinar registrants. Additionally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during closing and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. And before we begin, I would like to call your attention to our upcoming GLR Learning Tuesdays webinars. Later this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we invite you to join us again for a session on systems of resilience, critical factors for decision making. And then on July 26th, post-GLR week, we invite you to join us for a session to wrap up the month of July on innovation in out-of-school digital STEM initiatives. And finally, I would like to invite all of you to join us for GLR Week 2022, which is next week, July 18th through the 22nd. We'll have a series of virtual events that spotlight how dozens of states are working to advance early school success and accelerate equitable learning recovery. In addition, there will be daily plenary sessions for GLR's networks, and we invite you to join as many as you can. Registration and more information will be posted in the chat box now, and we hope you can join us. Joining me now is Malai Amfar, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sierra. I want to extend my thanks to all of our panelists and to all of you who are joining us today for this really exciting and fantastic webinar that is jam-packed full of information. Sierra, if you could advance the slide, please. Thank you. So how does providing access to high quality books and reading materials impact systems change towards the achievement of positive outcomes for children and families? Today's webinar will explore this question and provide space for community leaders to share their stories about how they lead this work. We will also hear from First Book as a key provider of the resources that can help provide supports and efforts with providing high quality materials to families and children. Next slide, please. We have a full panel of experts today, and I highly encourage you to check out their full biographies in the bio sheet that I just linked onto Clip and in the chat box. First, we will hear from Arianne Weldon, State GLR Lead for Georgia and Get Georgia Reading. Next, she will loop in her colleagues from the local level at Chattahoochee Valley, Grace Nagel and Alan Harkness. We will also hear about the local work happening in St. Louis, Missouri from Lisa Greening with Turn the Page STL and her colleague Linda Mitchell with Metro East Literacy Project. You can go to the next slide, Sierra. Then we will round out our time with Candace Radoski from First Book. Next slide, please. Before we get into all of that fantastic information, we do want to take a moment with this centering question. So if you could please just reflect in the chat box what your favorite children's book is to read aloud. This will help to prime your minds to listen to this information about books and access to free materials, high quality materials, and the so much more part, which is also key to an engagement. So please put your answers in the chat and we will lift up a few, and then I will toss it to Arianne in a moment. I see we've got some really cool ones coming in already. Thank you, everybody who's contributing. Frog and Toad was my favorite too, Bailey. Milo imagines the world, pout pout fish. Oh my gosh, chicka chicka boom boom. That's a really great one to read aloud. Creepy Carrots, that sounds really interesting. Skippy John Jones is one that I used to love reading to my nieces and nephews. Good Night Moon, that's fantastic. Everybody's coming up with these so quickly. Thank you so much, keep them coming. So at this point, I am going to toss it to Arianne, who will share with us about the work that's happening with Get Georgia Reading. And Sierra, you can go ahead and advance the slide, please. Thank you. All right, Arianne, take it away.
Thank you, Malayan. Good afternoon, everybody. And to the team, thank you for the opportunity to join today's Crucible of Practice, considering that access is so much more than we sometimes realize. And first, a little context summarizing Georgia's statewide approach and really starting with our shared purpose, which is to advance the 4 pillars to achieve profound change and get Georgia reading. Next slide, please. The Get Georgia Reading campaign is a statewide collective impact effort of public and private partners committed to a shared framework for action known as the 4 pillars, with a unifying goal of all children in Georgia starting at birth on a path to reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade. Next slide, please. The framework consists of 4 research-based pillars that define the conditions that must be in place to achieve this goal. So let's walk through the definitions of each. Next slide, please. First is language nutrition. And that is that all children experience abundant, positive, language-rich social interactions with caregivers, educators, and peers. Next, access. All children and their families have access to and support for healthy development, emotional well-being, and educational achievement. Next slide. Now, just like we said, access is really more than we sometimes realize. So in addition to the summary definition above, the 6 keys to access provides a rubric to help guide action. This rubric is intended to serve as a rich resource for problem solving to accelerate change. And you can see that we look at things like awareness, thinking about, does the intended audience know that the resource exists? And if they do they know what the benefits are and why it matters for them? Much deeper of something to really consider. Affordable, of course, looking at a cost of a resource. Accessible, our location. Available, does the size or volume of the resource meet the intended audience needs? And a couple of elements that sometimes don't really get thought about, and that is accommodating. Is the approach to providing the resources, does it align with intended audience needs? And acceptable, has the intended audience, are they receptive to the available resources provided? And really thinking about these 6 A's can really overcome sometimes some things that may be stumping a particular effort. Next slide, please. So the 3rd pillar is positive learning climate. All educators, families, and policymakers understand and address the impact of learning climate on social and emotional engagement and student success. And finally, next slide, please. Teacher preparation and effectiveness. We really think of teachers as all caregivers and educators are equipped with evidence-informed skills to effectively engage all children through developmentally responsive practice. Next slide, please. So the 4 pillars provide a shared language, shared understanding, and shared sense of urgency across all sectors, fostering unprecedented partnerships, encouraging continued engagement and innovation, creating new opportunities for change, and helping prevent the natural tendency to drift toward working in silos. Next slide, please. And together, campaign partners fulfill 5 roles. Next slide, please. The first is identify and make sense of factors that affect a child's path to 3rd grade reading proficiency. Connect and support decision makers to move from a sector-focused approach to a population-focused approach. Use research and data to inform action and align policies and investments that advance the 4 pillars. Inspire collective action and innovation to create the conditions defined by the 4 pillars so that all children are on a path to literacy. And celebrate partner successes and clearly communicate possibilities to realize the 4 pillars across the state. And I'm really excited to say, as you'll hear today, from community leaders in the Chattahoochee Valley, Georgia area, there are campaign partners and leaders crafting unexpected solutions and transforming how systems operate. Please welcome Grace Nagel and Alan Harkness.
Thank you so much, Arianne. I am so excited to be here to share with you a little bit about our story in the Chattahoochee Valley, a little bit about what the basics are. We can go to our first slide, or the next slide, please. Yeah. So a couple of goals from our presentation today. I want to share with you how the Chattahoochee Valley has adopted the basics as a cross-sector strategy for early literacy. We want to showcase our collective impact work in early childhood development. And then last but certainly not least, I will pass it along to my partner, Alan Harkness, the director of the Chattahoochee Valley Libraries, to demonstrate how we are addressing access needs by going fines free. You can find out a little bit more about the work that we do in the chat. There are some links on there. I hope you take the opportunity to take a look at those. So next slide, please. So how did we get here? Back in 2016, Columbus, Georgia, which is in West Central Georgia, and the Chattahoochee Valley, which comprises about 10 counties in West Central Georgia, and often overlaps into Russell County in Alabama, we conducted a regional prosperity assessment just to see where our community was stacked up with others. And out of 61 metro areas throughout the Southeast, we noticed some disturbing trends. And the first one being that we have really slow population growth. We were 58 out of 61 of these communities. We had a less educated population, one of the highest communities, one of the lowest percentages of communities of adults 25 and up that had a bachelor's degree. And we had high poverty rates, hovering somewhere between 20 and 22%. And we knew that that was a wake-up call for our community to do something. And that led us to part of our Columbus 2025 strategic plan. So next slide, please. So if you can see here on the graph a little bit, there are 5 action areas of our strategic plan. And the Basics Chattahoochee Valley fills a key piece in this strategic plan, specifically in the Talented Educated People action area. If we want to make Columbus and the Chattahoochee Valley a place where people want to live, work, and play, we have to start with the children, the youngest citizens in our region. And if you can see, the logos on the bottom right of our screen represent a lot of our founding, funding, and operating partnerships between Columbus 2025, the Community Foundation of the Chattahoochee Valley, and United Way of the Chattahoochee Valley. So our backbone and operating support comes from United Way. We're able to build upon a really strong framework, a really strong community network as well, to share the message about early childhood development. And the basics, which we'll talk a little bit more in the next slides, dovetails with United Way equity and well-being strategies. And through a partnership between the Sandra Dunnigan Deal Center and the United Way and Columbus 2025, we launched in 2019 under the Collective Impact Grant Initiative and became the first basics community in Georgia. So under 2025, we kind of have a more community-wide strategy and expanded those efforts in 2020 with operating support with the endowment funds of the Community Foundation of the Chattahoochee Valley. So suffice it to say that the basics is really a community-wide strategy. It's one that kind of fills an early childhood piece and that we're really lucky to have in our community. Next slide, please. So what are the basics? And if we know that 3rd grade reading level is our goal, we want as many children as possible to read on grade level by 3rd grade, we can't start when they enter kindergarten. We can't start when they enter preschool. We have to start from the moment that they're born, because 80% of brain growth happens in the first 3 years of life. The brain actually doubles in size in that first year of life. And the basics really came out of research by Dr. Ron Ferguson, who was actually researching economics and the achievement gap at the Kennedy School at Harvard. And what he found was that that you can't wait until kindergarten, that you have to do something early on, but it doesn't have to be very intense. It's more about intention. And he has 3 separate pieces of this basics movement, which are the 5 principles. We'll talk about those in a second. A cross-sector strategy that focuses on socio-ecological saturation, and a network of communities where people are practicing the basics and learning and growing together. So when we launched in 2019, the Chattahoochee Valley was about the 30th basics community in the country, and we're growing substantially, not only nationally, but even globally. At our meetings, there are communities from Brazil and Bermuda and Australia, so it's really taking off. And I think when people see the benefits of having a strategy like the basics, they quickly want to become part of this network. And the funding and partnership with the Deal Center has really propelled a lot of growth in Georgia in particular. Arianne can attest to this. And now in 2021, excuse me, the dates are all blurring together with COVID, it's fun. We had our first collective impact launch, a statewide launch of the basics to bring the basics to 10 new communities in Georgia. And we have since expanded to 17 total. So this is really exciting for us as a state. It's exciting for the basics movement, and Georgia is really pioneering the way for the basics to be used as an early childhood strategy. So next slide, please. So I've talked a lot about this movement, but what are the basics principles? They are 5 fun, simple, and powerful ways that every family can give every child a great start in life, beginning from birth. And you can see them on the right-hand side of your screen. They are to maximize love, manage stress, talk, sing, and point, count, group, and compare, explore through movement and play, and read and discuss stories. And each one of these basics principles encompasses a huge umbrella of activities, scientific concepts, and all sorts of activities that people can do, whether they're parents, caregivers, professionals, etc., to give children a great start in life. And they encompass most of what experts say is important for development in that critical 0 to 3 range, because again, 80% of brain growth happens in that time. But for us, we really like the basics because it creates a common language across sectors. The basics is not about supplanting any work that is being done in the community. Rather, it's about giving an extra tool in your partner toolkits. And this is what we found to be the most effective for us. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, this is the basic strategy, and Dr. Ferguson calls it the socio-ecological saturation method. Essentially, any organization in your community that works with families with young children needs to know about the basics. And it's not just needs to know about them, it's that their colleagues, that their workers are using the basics in their workplace. They're sharing and communicating messages to parents and caregivers. They're seen as the trusted messengers. So as much as I'm passionate about the basics, I can only do so much as one person. And in order to build up our community, to meet those talented, educated people action area goals, I need to have as many people in the community doing this work and sharing and communicating these ideas. The basics will look different at every organization. It will look completely different in a hospital setting versus a pediatric practice, or even in the faith community or at an early childhood center. But regardless, the more touch points that parents and families have with the basics, the more they'll be likely to do them. And again, it's about creating a tool in our partners' toolboxes. We want to build up sustainable and effective work in early childhood in each sector. Next slide, please. The sustainability aspect is a really important one. And when I think about the work that the basics does, a lot of it is about building up on the 4 pillars that Arianne mentioned for Get Georgia Reading, and thinking really about that question of access. That's been something that's on a lot of our minds lately, the staff at United Way, and a lot of our partners as well, particularly with COVID, where a lot of face-to-face interactions have been really limited. And when I think about access, it's of course that all children and their families have access to and support for healthy development, emotional well-being, and educational achievement. And we know this is not true for all children and families in the Chattahoochee Valley. So part of our cross-sector work with the basics is asking people, what access issues do they see in their communities? Alan and I have a partner named Warren Steele who works with First Readers. First Readers is an organization that mails free books to children up until the age of 5. And Warren went into the home of a family who, as a child, had received books every month from birth until 5. And the child was there showing off their book collection proudly. And Warren asked the parents, "Oh, well, how many books has she read?" And they went, "Oh, she'll read them in kindergarten, silly. She can't read them now." So it's not just a question of having the material access. It's about having the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do these work, to do any kind of early childhood education work on a daily basis, as well as just thinking about other lived experiences of people and getting their voices heard. So I want to take the time and pass the baton on to Alan, because he and the library have done so much in making connections and changing systems to address access issues. So go ahead, Alan, take it away.
Thank you so much, Grace. It's really a pleasure to be with you all today. The component that I'm going to talk about today is our fines-free campaign that we went through and the implications that have resulted over time. Now, we did all this pre-COVID. So next slide, please, and we'll get you started here. So our mission at Chattahoochee Valley Libraries, we're a public library system here in West Central Georgia, is to be your place, your partner, and your library. And we look for opportunities to do all 3 of those. Our values are service, inclusion, passion, and community. And so fines are an opposition of our values and our mission. And nationally, a lot of public libraries have found that fines are a barrier to service. And so this is something we decided we wanted to do in Georgia, and we wanted to be the first to do it. It took us a year to plan it. So next, please. So the problem is, one of the many problems in terms of access, 25% of our cardholders stop using the library after one charge appeared on their account, just one time. Some from a business model, it doesn't make a lot of sense to charge people if they go away. It costs more to gain a customer in any line of work than it does to keep a customer. So the solution is we had to talk to our staff and get them used to the idea of going fines free. I also have 4 library boards and a regional library board that I had to talk into it. We also had to remove barriers, including fines, but a variety of fees. If you lose a library card, I'm not going to charge you to replace that card. Then we had to change a lot of our policies that affected this transition. We had to plan an awareness campaign, and then we had to cross our fingers because other library systems across the country that had done it had good results. We wanted to see what kind of outcomes that we could measure as well. Next, please. Then we did what we call the Big Waive, and that is take the risk, waive a lot of stuff. Over 18,000 people received some kind of waive. I had $9 on my account. $200,000 was cleared in waives, $100,000 in processing fees that we used to charge if you lose a book, yet another penalty that got in the way. And 7,000 records were completely cleared from our agency, from our collections agency as paid in full. So that was the Big Waive. What are the outcomes? Let's look at the next slide, please. You'll see we started this in early August of 19, and then these numbers are just hard to fathom. New library cards went up the first month, 35%, on up through February. Year to date, a 20% increase in new library cards. No library system gets those kinds of increases on an average day. So, we thought fines free was really helped us out a lot. And then you look at circulation, how many more items are being checked out, how much stuff is going out, and just under 10%. So some of those outputs pre-COVID were really, really positive, and we were very excited to be moving that direction. Some more hard numbers. Next slide, please. So a lot of people would say, well, then people aren't being responsible if they're not required to return their books. And so, well, yes, they actually were. And so here you'll see a couple years worth of the lost items returned by customers. And in fiscal year 20, that is the number that we're talking about. See how much larger these first few months were when people got word that we weren't charging them for overdues anymore. They brought their books back. That's actually more fiscally responsible for taxpayers. When more books are in our building, there are more things that people can check out. So that was really cool. Next slide. Another graph. How many people paid to replace a book just because we waived their fines. We didn't see this coming. And you can see there's 3 years worth of data there. Starting in August, it didn't really catch on. And then September and October, these numbers were significant. People paid to replace items that they had out. Again, people were choosing to be responsible. So that's kind of cool. Next slide. So that all that is data from the past. What is it looking like now? You look at the percentage of customers that were blocked completely, those that had any kind of balance on their library card. We have 4 counties in our region, Muskogee, Chattahoochee, Marion, and Stewart. And you can see the 3 more rural counties actually had a higher percentage of their customers being blocked. And everybody's in single digits now, and system-wide, we're at 3%. Fewer cards being blocked means more people can check stuff out. And that's what a library is for. That's what we're trying to do. Next slide. To go with head, I've got some heart here, some really great anecdotes that our staff captured. My favorite is that one woman told us she wasn't checking books out because having books turned in late by 1 day meant that they couldn't ride the bus. And if when you put it like that, it A, breaks your heart, B, makes you cry, but C, makes you realize we've done the right thing. Next slide. In addition, because we believe public means everyone, public library, public means everyone. In addition to these fines-free activities we had, we've started a big partnership with our school district's pre-K program. And we actually do a lot of the advertising for them to bring in an audience. And they added 2 classes this past year because of our work. We work with the basics, and all of the basic stuff that Grace alluded to earlier is on our own collateral that we put out. And this past year, we took on administering first readers. So more readers, more cards, more library activities. We think that's in everybody's best interest. And that way, when anybody's giving money to First locally, every dollar that goes to books, and I take care of the administration parts. Our story time features the basics. As I mentioned before, with our own local simple steps. We have a dedicated early childhood outreach department to be where the kids are. We have 2 bookmobiles. We have a quarter of the bookmobiles in Georgia to serve kids where they are in a whole variety of places. And then the book bundles have just been crazy popular, prepackaged on a variety of subjects. And so trying to remove barriers, trying to get more stuff out to where the people are, we feel like the numbers have reflected this, and we've just been really, really excited. And a lot of other libraries in Georgia are also going fines free as well. So we were glad to be a part of it, but we're certainly not the last. So thank you all. I think that was my last slide. No, there was one more. Haha. Lessons learned. We wish we had started it sooner. I waited about 3 years to go fines free. Looking for partnerships, that's part of our mission. Getting stakeholder buy-in, that took a little while. Being where our community is. And then regardless of where you are on EDI, we wanted to make sure that we were doing more of that as a component part of what the library does, and fines free really fed into well with that. So thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate everything that you talked about in terms of the library's efforts and what it really meant to go fine free. Grace, I appreciate also how you wove in together all of the various sectors that are involved with your work with the basics. And Arianne, thank you so much for going a little bit deeper with your pillar work and explaining the access component that came up in Grace's slides as well, with understanding that access means so much more than what people typically think, and that there's so much more behind it, and it does truly lead to a wider systems change. So thank you so much. We're going to head to the Midwest now for our tour of stories about book access and what it means for families and communities. And I'm very pleased to introduce our Executive Director of Turn the Page STL and her very good partner, Executive Director of Metro East Literacy Project. So please welcome Lisa and Linda, who are going to share a little bit about the work that's happening in St. Louis and East St. Louis. Lisa and Linda, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Malai. Thank you, everyone. Linda and I are very excited to talk about what's going on here in St. Louis, Missouri and East St. Louis, Illinois. And something that the word that kept coming out to me, what's going on in Georgia, is collaboration, alignment, and trust. And we're behind the curve. I will be honest with you, but we are working towards it. And Georgia is a phenomenal example of what's going on. In St. Louis and East St. Louis, we're spending our time centering culturally responsive work to end book deserts while increasing community-wide reading. What we're going to talk about today is I'm going to talk briefly about book deserts. What are book deserts and the racial divide that we have here in St. Louis? Linda will continue to talk about her project in East St. Louis, Illinois, creating a community of readers. And then I will jump back in to talk about Turn the Page STL, which is St. Louis's chapter of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading and our work with family engagement. Next slide. So these are some facts in St. Louis. And I would go so far as to say in Metro East St. Louis. Systemic racism is embedded in the fabric of the St. Louis region. We have what we call the Delmar Divide in St. Louis. It is a street that runs from east to west or west to east, and it is predominantly Black north of Delmar and predominantly white south of Delmar. We now, in our 7 lowest performing school districts north of Delmar, they are more segregated than before Brown versus Board of Education. Close to 99% of those school districts are African American. The result is high poverty rates for African Americans. The poverty rate is 4 to 6 times higher for African Americans than whites in St. Louis. And when I started this work 2.5 years ago, we were looking at 24% of 3rd grade students in those 7 lowest performing school districts not being able to pass the standardized statewide English language assessment. Now with COVID this past year, fewer than 14% of our 3rd grade students in our 7 lowest performing school districts passed the test, the ELA test. That means 86% of our 4th graders this year were not able to read well the materials in front of them. Next slide. So we started looking at book deserts. We started saying, what is a book desert? And Dr. Molly Ness, who I highly recommend, taking a look at her website and her podcast, with endbookdeserts.com and talking with uniteforliteracy.com, we were able to determine where our book deserts were in St. Louis. And simply saying it's a geographic area where reading materials are difficult to obtain. The term was coined by Unite for Literacy to call attention to structural inequities that compromise children's reading development. And then researcher Susan Newman points out that book deserts for children growing up in neighborhoods of concentrated poverty constrain the opportunity to come to school ready to learn. I think earlier it was mentioned that children learn to read starting the day they're born, maybe even before that, some argue. So it's getting book access to families on day one. Next slide. You can go to Unite for Literacy's website and you can type in any zip code, actually any place in the world, and you can determine what book deserts are in your community. It's a phenomenal map. You can see where the data sources come from. But just to give you an idea, if you look at St. Louis is on the left, East St. Louis we're separated by the Mississippi River. St. Louis is in Missouri. East St. Louis is in Illinois. The red areas show that fewer than four books in the homes in those red areas. I bet you guys could figure out where the Delmar Divide is. Delmar Divide, I'm sorry. We've got this new, where the Delmar Divide is. Could everybody see where that could be? Everything north, red. It's a racial issue, plain and simple, here in St. Louis. When meeting with the organization of Unite for Literacy, they would say that this pattern is quite similar in almost all of our communities across the country. Next slide. So what are we doing in East St. Louis? I have just been so honored to work with Linda Mitchell, who's across the river, but not too far away, and have been in awe of her work of galvanizing a community and getting rid of our book deserts and inspiring families to become a reading family. So take it away, Linda. Tell us what you're doing.
Yes, yes, there is a book desert in East St. Louis. And of course, my antidote was to create a book flood. And so my book flood is to give a family 25 books to start out with. And this erudite nation idea is that if a family is going to pledge to have 100 books in their home by 2024, we're going to start them out with the first bag of 25 books. Now, what's important is that these books are not just kids' books. We are giving books for the adults and the children, because I believe that you have to change the culture in the home, and changing the culture actually starts with the adults. And the adults need to demonstrate, model, show excitement for reading. Even if they can't read, they can model the reading by simply having a book in your hand, turning the pages, and then your little children, as their brains are developing, they're watching that. And that goes into I think the next slide, I talk about the Imitate Reading Initiative. It's the importance of parents modeling the reading for the kids to create that culture for family transformation. And I could see how important that is, having been a parent educator, going on over 1,000 home visits in St. Louis to homes, and noticing the homes that have books in their homes, and then the families that did not have any books in their homes, and what a difference it made to have those books in the home. Now, what I love that we're doing, this new initiative, is that, okay, so we give a family a bag of books. Now what? What's next? Well, we want to follow up with them. It's as if you give a family a bag of groceries and they take a bag of groceries home. Well, you don't know what they're doing with that bag of groceries. We don't know what they're cooking, whether they're using what's in that bag. Same idea with the bag of books. We want to know, what are you doing with that bag of books? So we are recruiting what we call our encouragement team volunteers. And these are people who are going to follow up with the families within for 7 times throughout the year. So they're going to ask them questions like, well, were there any books in that bag that you enjoyed? They're going to offer resources like, do you need a public library card? And a family may say, well, I'm having vision problems, and we can give them resources for that. But it's so important to have that follow-up, and we can collect that data, because we're also going to have a survey, like an intake form that we do with the family, so we can determine, well, do you already have books in your home? What kind of books do you like? Do you have enough lighting in your home? That's something that people don't think about. I went into a home, it was very dark. So even if they have books in a home, how are they going to read the book if there's no lighting, there's no lamps? And so eventually I would love to partner with a company that will give families lamps and lighting. But so we'll ask a few questions to get this data that we can share out with the community, because we want our stakeholders to know what's going on with the families in East St. Louis. Did the families, is that book desert map accurate? And I know personally that the family that I'm working with now, no, they did not have any books in their home. They had a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, a 17-year-old, 2 adults, and they didn't have any reading material in the home until I took them the bag of 25 books. But this is a new initiative. We're just getting started here in 2022. So I don't have any data yet, but I'm really excited because I think it's just a simple thing to do is to partner with some child care centers, other agencies that deal with children. These are how we're going to find our families in these particular zip codes. And we'll have events where we will give them the bag of books, and then we will follow up with them. Next slide. So I want to turn this back over to Lisa, and look forward to entertaining any questions you may have as we go through the program. Thank you.
Linda, what is so wonderful and remarkable about what you're doing is you're building that trust. Just like in Georgia with the library systems and with the work with the basics, it's trust, and it's families helping families and families supporting families and communication. So as I said before, Turn the Page STL, which is on the Missouri side, is our chapter of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. And our vision is a community with no disparities in literacy based on race or zip code by increasing the number of children that are reading at or above grade level reading by the end of 3rd grade. How do we do this? How do we do this across the communities? One of the first things we did was we spent a whole year bringing in about 125 stakeholders and 8 focus groups to determine what are the causes, why are our children unable to read by the end of 3rd grade? And why in St. Louis? What is going on here in St. Louis that is so stark, I should say? And after this analysis, we were able to say that there were 5 major reasons. I will just say them: kindergarten readiness, summer learning, you guys have all heard this, teacher preparedness, family engagement, and community awareness. And what we really decided to focus on right away was family engagement, knowing that neuroscience, right, that the children 0 to 3, we've got to start talking, tuning in, and taking turns with those young children and getting them access to books in a trusting, and I say this, community access to reading in a trusting and quality way. So trust and quality is what I just wanted to end this with. So we started our book desert analysis as looking at where our books were. And we know that it's more than just places for books, it's where people go. So for example, about 10 years ago, the St. Louis County Economic Council built 25 libraries in businesses in our North County area, North City and North County area. And they used books that were donated by our local public library system, books that were not being checked out and were being taken out of circulation. And they were put into these libraries. Well, guess what? They weren't the high interest, right, books. They weren't culturally relevant books, and they weren't being used. So you can't just put books that are books someplace and assume people will read them. So we looked back this year, the program kind of fell apart. We looked back this year and we said, it's important for people in these businesses to have quality libraries areas in but let's fill them with brand new, high quality, high interest, primarily African-American books that children can see and families can see in these businesses. And we're using our local African-American bookstore to fill those libraries. Is it expensive? More expensive? Yes, but it's not that expensive compared to the systems in place what happens to a child when they can't read. That's when it gets expensive. We also we were out in the community last year. Linda was with me a bunch of times. We were out at fast food restaurants and laundromats, and you guys have heard a lot about laundromats and book festivals. We purposely went where families were, and we passed out books and we talked to families, and we realized that this was just a one-time shot. right? We were just talking to families, giving them books. It wasn't, it didn't continue. It didn't become part of the community. And so several of our fast food restaurants, including McDonald's and Chick-fil-A, have now decided to close their indoor playgrounds, primarily because of COVID. All because of COVID, I shouldn't say primarily, because of COVID, they're not reopening these indoor playgrounds. And so we're embarking on building reading areas in the fast food restaurants, and then to go on to laundromats. But in those fast food restaurants, and they'll be very culturally responsive. Oops, I've seen all the different chats. Sorry about that. So that is what we've taken from our book desert analysis and how we can get more and more books. We're also looking at this was based on a model, I believe in Philadelphia, putting QR codes on these library places so that families could get trusted, relevant, up-to-date information about the basics. I wanted to share 3 other things that we are up to, also based on Philadelphia's project, The Reading Captains. We found a nonprofit here in St. Louis that has volunteers that read to preschool age children and pass out books to preschool age children. And they have taken it upon themselves, after us writing a business plan, to start a Reading Captains program here in St. Louis. We'll start small, but it all comes back to that trust. So when people, especially during COVID, stopped trusting, sadly, in St. Louis public libraries, and stopped sadly trusting health clinics and schools and Head Starts, there was this huge lack of trust. And so we're talking with families and mobilizing families in the communities that we serve to provide trusted information so that families know our public libraries are fine free. They get that information. The summer camp programs are down the street, whatever that information is. Lastly, our public libraries are amazing institutions here in St. Louis. We're also building, I believe, literacy labs. These are in community centers and in schools, where it is focused completely on African-American children with large artwork and African-American books. And it's set up kind of like a little house where you have like a dining room table and chairs and chandeliers and comfy chairs and drapes and very expressive, believe in yourself. Sayings and drawings on the walls. Linda, have you seen these? Yeah.
Yes, they're beautiful.
They're beautiful. They're amazing.
Yes,
and
yes.
Families are flooding to them. I remember one little boy took me to show me his Believe library at one of his schools. And he says, I go to the coolest school. Look at this. And he was just like, it was his place. And it's not a place of teaching. It's a place of hanging. And lastly, I want to say that a large part of the issues with family reading engagement is many of our families tell me that they're struggling readers, and they get embarrassed.
Right.
Embarrassed
Right.
to read to their children. And so we are embarking on starting with self-published books here in St. Louis. We have a lot of amazing, including Linda, phenomenal children's book authors here in St. Louis, and looking at putting QR codes also on the back of books so that somebody else could be reading it aloud while the family member is holding the child and turning the pages. So I think that's it.
Lisa and Linda, thank you so much. We do have a bit of extra
Thank you.
time, and there was a question that came up. I think perhaps it was when you were talking. It's a question from Emily. She said, I like the encouragement team volunteer idea. How are you recruiting and training this team? If you can speak to that, it's very specific to the work that you're doing with Turn the Page and Metro East Literacy Project.
And you can go to the next slide too. Go ahead.
Okay, yes. The encouragement team volunteer training, we have 2 scheduled, one on August 4th and one on August 13th. The one on August 4th, we are working on making that a virtual and an in-person. So that will be recorded and I can share that out with people. I do request that the volunteers do get the training first so that they can learn the why behind the what, the why behind the mission. And it's a fun training. And so anyone around the nation could be an ETV because they're going to interact with the family virtually by phone. So yes, if you'll go to my website or email me, I'll have more information about that. We're just getting ready to launch that program. Now, the individual child care centers, I tailor a training just for those centers because their own staff have raised their hand to interact, become the volunteers for the families within that daycare center. So that's fabulous. And but then the others out in the community who are not affiliated with daycare programs, I am looking for volunteers to match one family per volunteer or maybe 2. I just don't want a person to have a large caseload, even though they're only going to make 7 phone calls. I want to keep it very, like Lisa said, trusting and build a relationship just to encourage them along their way, encourage those families.
That's awesome. Thank you, Linda. I want to give a shout out too. There was a person who was interested in volunteering. And so if we could pause on this slide, you have the contact information from Lisa and Linda. Just behind the scenes, I was letting that person know I would do an email introduction, but now I don't have to. You can reach out very directly to Lisa and Linda to get connected there. And I just want to ask one more question because it's something that you had just said, Linda, about relationship building. And Lisa had mentioned that as well as she talked about the component of relationship building being so key. Can you say a little bit more about how that relationship building takes place as a part of your programming? This is for either of you too.
Well, for me, that relationship building is key. As I said, as a former parent educator with the Parents as Teachers program, that was a foundation of when I go on the home visits to build that relationship with the family. And what I'm looking at is not I'll say to look at the strengths of the family and use positive, affirming language with that family. For instance, Lisa, you said the parents say, well, I can't read, I'm not a confident reader. I get that a lot. And so we will train our volunteers to say, oh, that's no problem. We encourage you to turn the book. You can turn the pages, and it's not about you reading exactly what's on a page, especially for a 2-year-old. They don't know what you're reading. You can make up a story. But then to take it to another level, do you want to be able to read better? We have resources for you to help you get reading tutoring. That's something else that we offer. So it's building the relationship and keeping your word when you talk to families, and all of those things matter so that they trust you. If you're going to call them,
Also,
be faithful with the family.
Everything about this work that we're doing is based on relationships and trust.
Yes.
And I would so far say that the reason that for only 14% of our 3rd grade students are reading proficiently is because we don't have those relationships and trust in St. Louis. We are extraordinarily fragmented. I was gushing listening to Georgia, and all their collaborative work and alignment, and we're very fragmented, and we're not trusted. People don't trust their neighbor. They don't trust any of the systems here in place. And it's a time that we need to empower neighborhoods to to figure out with resources how to best build that neighborhood and build those systems that are quality. It can't come from, honestly, the white lady here from, you know, it can't come from me. It has to come from the communities that we're serving. And for way too long, people looking like me told communities what they needed to do. And guess what? It doesn't work. So just being honest, relationships and trust and follow through.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the power too behind, you're talking very much about the why, and your data. I was reflecting on the map. It's kind of stuck in my brain now. Just seeing the great disparity in your community, and just knowing the efforts that your coalition and both of you are doing on both sides of the river there is extremely powerful. So I appreciate your time and sharing your story with us. We're going to just take a slight pivot. There was a question that came up in the chat about, it was about, let me just see, concerns about quality books, because that was one of the things that you had mentioned around the importance of high quality materials and books that are representative of the children and families in a particular community. And Sierra, if you could go to the next slide, please. We're going to hear from a provider of high quality materials. I just wanted to share also just personally and anecdotally, when I was a community lead, I had a partnership with First Book, and it was really incredible to utilize their resources and to infuse our own rural communities in Iowa with the materials provided by First Book. And so I would like to just have Candace come on and share a little bit about First Book. And then as she is finishing up, we have several questions that are starting to pop up, so we will have some time to answer those as well. So Candace, if you could please come on camera and share, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Thanks for those kind words and introduction. And thank you for including First Book in this inspiring conversation today. It's been just really encouraging and wonderful to learn more about the great literacy and family engagement work that's happening across the country and in campaign communities everywhere. It's a really nice bright light after the last couple of years of a lot of hardship stories. So thanks to you all for everything you're doing. First Book is a national nonprofit 501c3 that furthers educational equity for under-resourced children in the US and Canada by focusing on increasing access to brand new, culturally rich, relevant educator support resources and books, as well as a variety of other educational materials and essentials that help kids learn. Next slide. We have design capabilities and structures to address educational equity challenges at a systemic level by aggregating and elevating the voices of educators and providers in the field. So for the next few minutes, I'll provide a brief overview of these interlocking models and how First Book uses them to promote equity, and share with everyone here how you can connect and get connected to First Book's resources, as well as share it with your network. So hopefully we can work together to provide even more culturally rich books into high need communities. Basically, everything we do is driven by educators working in low income communities. That network currently numbers more than 525,000 formal and informal educators and grows by hundreds per week. Through our research arm, we hear directly from the communities regarding issues that face them and their children that they reach. And then we rapidly respond to those needs through our accelerator program. This includes increasing access to high quality, diverse and inclusive books, educational materials, evidence-based strategies, and more through the First Book Marketplace, as well as driving down the cost of these resources through aggregated buying and raised funding so that everything we offer is either free or available at the lowest prices possible for those reaching children and families in high need communities. The great news is it is free to join the First Book Network. Qualified educators include anyone working in Title I or Title I eligible schools, or any program setting in which at least 70% of the children or youth reached are from low income households. We use educators kind of as shorthand, educators, providers, but it really is anyone working in these types of settings, after school programs, pediatricians' offices, faith-based organizations, food pantries, homeless shelters. Anyone reaching families in need is eligible to sign up with First Book for free. It takes less than 10 minutes online, and once connected, educators have ongoing access to our free and low-cost books and resources through the First Book Marketplace, as well as special opportunities and events that are exclusive to the First Book Network. Signing up also means that educators can add their voice to the movement through research studies and focus groups conducted by First Book. And these insights are elevated through media and other public platforms to shine a light on systemic barriers to education in under-resourced areas. Additionally, the aggregated purchasing power of this community drives down costs for the entire social sector by contributing to First Book's ability to leverage the deepest volume discounts with publishers and other vendors. So basically together, we maximize the purchasing power of the entire social sector through the First Book Network. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the First Book Marketplace is our primary social enterprise platform. For the past 30 years, First Book has worked with the publishing industry to create collaborative disruption, driving down costs and increasing access to culturally inclusive content specifically. Through this nonprofit e-commerce site, we provide books, free ebooks, accelerator resources, and a wide range of educational materials, either for free or at the lowest possible costs. We distribute about 15 to 17 million books annually to educators working in low-income communities. And these books are selected directly by the educators. We always leave the choice in the hands of either our organization partners or the educators themselves. They know what is needed in their classroom or program and what's going to get their families and kids really engaged in reading and sharing time together. So the marketplace includes books for kids from birth through young adulthood, as well as classroom and program materials like school supplies, art supplies, STEM activities, and early childhood manipulatives. It houses free educator support materials on relevant topics, created with field leaders to address socially relevant issues like supporting children's mental health and well-being, supporting children who have experienced trauma, fostering conversations about race in the classroom, or maybe it's book lists and activities to promote changemaker mindset among kids and educators. There's a variety of resources, toolkits, videos, reading guides, all available for free through the First Book Marketplace and our accelerator work. Additionally, on the marketplace, you'll find the First Book National Book Bank, which is the only national clearinghouse for publisher donated inventory. We distribute about 10 million free books per year through this channel. First Book members pay just the cost of shipping and handling, which is about 75 cents per book. And then lastly, I want to share with you that First Book works with corporate foundation and individual supporters who provide funds to further subsidize or fully underwrite the already low costs of the books on the marketplace. When educators sign up with First Book, they automatically have access to this support and other special opportunities. In 2021 alone, First Book distributed more than $6 million in raised funds in the form of marketplace credits to our network. Linking the next area of our work, research and insights, First Book has a dedicated research arm, the First Book Research and Insights work, where we conduct focus groups and surveys to hear directly from educators in our network regarding what's going on in their communities and what they as educators need to remove barriers to learning. As many before me have pointed out today, books are so much more than just literacy tools. They are bridges to relationships and important conversations with families. They're engagement tools. They provide mirrors and windows to help children see themselves and feel that their culture and background is honored, and to develop empathy for others who are not like them. And as this graphic shows, the wide range of issues and social issues that teachers in the First Book Network use books to address, this type of feedback informs title selection on the marketplace to ensure that high quality, relevant titles are available and accessible to help educators build collections that are addressing these key topics of interest. As Lisa and Linda pointed out, it's not just about having any book, it's about having the right book for the right audience. And everything that we make available is brand new with a really strong focus on cultural diversity and relevance. Our research and insights work also includes aggregating insights and leadership across the social sector. An example I wanted to share with you all today is in May, First Book convened a conversation to explore how a coalition of organizations supporting underserved children and family can use our collaborative power to significantly increase the number and affordability and variety of diverse books distributed each year. The convening included 39 leaders from 30 organizations with a number of GLR campaign partners participating, including Book Harvest and Read on Arizona, and with the support and leadership of Ralph Smith, who everyone here knows is the campaign's fearless national leader. And we just really appreciated the campaign's support and leadership and insight in this work. The coalition is currently organizing to develop opportunities that leverage our collective market power and address new and ongoing challenges to book access and affordability. So stay tuned there. More to come from this coalition, really focused on organizing to create even more collaborative disruption and get even more diverse books out into the market. Next slide, please. Often our research leads to the creation of educator support resources. So through the First Book Accelerator, we address specific educator identified issues that they're confronting, and we expedite access to actionable training tools and resources developed collaboratively with experts in the field. There are more than 50 free accelerator resources available in the marketplace, and we are developing about one per month at this point. Our latest guide on supporting student emotional wellness was created with On Our Sleeves, a leading child mental health organization. We've collaborated with content experts like Ellen Galinsky and her Mind in the Making work, Ashoka, their change-making framework, CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic and Social and Emotional Learning, and American University, just to name a few. So we really listen to the needs of the network, folks who respond to the surveys and focus groups, identify leaders in the field who are experts in those content areas, and then work to create really actionable tools through our accelerator program and make those tools available for free on the First Book Marketplace. A sneak preview of upcoming resources that I'll share today. You guys are getting the first sneak preview. First Book is working with Susan Newman. I saw some of her work cited previously today. She's an expert researcher on early childhood and literacy development. And through First Book research and insights process, we're collaborating to create and validate a tool designed to help educators evaluate how literacy rich their classroom or program environment is. We expect to release those results in August ahead of back to school time. And we're really excited to make this tool available to educators so that they can advocate for the resources they need in their classrooms and programs. Last slide. So that's the gist. That is the flyover of First Book. The most important aspect of our work is that these models elevate educators' voices and purchasing power to create a system that's responsive and powered by the educators in historically under-resourced communities to further educational equity. I would like to invite anyone on this call today to reach out if you'd like to share First Book with your network. We have messages we can provide, and I currently have funding available for marketplace credits. So if you would like to share, we just met First Book and you're invited to sign up message, reach out to me and we will provide links and credits so that your network receives $50 each for free books on the marketplace. My team also develops partnerships with organizations at the organization level and works closely with state departments of education, national nonprofits, and more. So welcome the opportunity to connect with any of you if you'd like to explore a larger scale collaboration as well. Please do feel free to send me a note at the email listed here today. And I just thank you again for your time today. It was a pleasure to share a bit more about First Book. And if we're not already, I hope we can support your great work very soon.
Thank you so much, Candace. Again, you're getting a lot of love in the chat. I don't know, probably haven't been able to see that, but we have so many that are joining with us today that have ordered from First Book and have utilized your high quality materials. I do have a question that I thought of as you were chatting. For those who have not connected with First Book, you had mentioned the marketplace. Can you share a little bit more about how somebody new to the marketplace would sign up? How easy is it?
So easy. So the link, I don't know if you want to go back to the marketplace slide, but it has the link on it.
Yeah, I can pop it in the chat too. I think I had it somewhere in my my list.
Okay, or sorry, it's the network slide. Firstbook.org/NPP will get you to the registration screens, and it's self-reported, self-verified. We collect information about where folks work, the organizational information, number of kids reached, ages served, languages, that type of thing. That helps us understand who we're reaching to inform the inventory, but also when we're talking with funders about the need and what our network looks like. And so it's about a 10-minute process online. It's all information that I think most folks who are working in Title I schools or in any organization have at their fingertips, and it's immediate. So once you go through, there's I think 4 screens, then you're immediately connected. You log on to your account. Anyone can look at the marketplace, but you log on to your account on the marketplace, and then you can put things in your shopping cart and get the books you need.
It's fun too. I'll mention
it's really fun.
It's fun to look at the books. Sierra, if you could maybe put, well, never mind, I'll get it. Alice was wondering to have Candace's information. So Alice, I will get that for you. We do have a bit of time now for some QA. Oh, good. Sierra's going to, thank you, Sierra. If we could just pause here for Alice and for others who are wanting to jot down Candace's information. Candace, I have a feeling you're going to be flooded with emails after this, which is good. I think we definitely wanted to connect First Book with our network here because of the amazing materials that you provide, and also give a shout out for the social emotional materials that you had mentioned and that you and I had talked about when this brainchild for the webinar first began. There was a lot of really powerful things that you can provide for youth and children within that realm and topic as well. So if I could ask everybody to come onto camera, we've got about 15 minutes or so to go through some of the questions that have been popping up. I appreciate it. First question that I'm going to ask is for Lisa, Linda, Grace, and Alan to chime in about your book giveaways or events where you do give books. Our title of the webinar today is about books, access, and so much more. Can you please say a few words about how you ensure that our giveaways do also include engagement and the community at large, how that is a piece of the work? Like, what does that look like in practice? And anyone can jump in.
I guess I can go ahead and answer a little bit. I think that's a great question because it's more than just, as we've heard today, you can't just simply give someone a book and expect the parent to know what to do with it, how to incorporate it. So for us, we've been doing a lot more parent workshops with the basics about everyday things that they can do, that it doesn't have to be scary and it doesn't have to take a lot of time, that even if you do 3 sessions of 5 minutes each of reading, that does a tremendous amount. So we usually do a lot of book giveaways at the end of these parent workshops. So the parents are already trained on the basics. They understand the importance of reading, and that sort of kind of compels them to want to read more. And we also try to not only give them a couple of books for their own home libraries, but to refer them to our partners like the libraries, about the book bundles, about going fines free, that it's more than just what we're able to provide, that there's an entire community of people who's ready to help meet their needs.
Thanks, Grace. Lisa and Linda, what do you see with your book giveaways? How is the so much more provided, and how does that translate?
Linda, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll just say, I love having those one-on-one conversations with the parents, like what Grace was saying. What you're doing is educating the parent, because it's more than just a kid coming home from school with a book, and then the teacher is asking the parent to read the book to the kid. Well, the parent needs to know why. Why is this important? And so I love having that one-on-one conversation with the parent to educate them and let them know, even like you were saying, or somebody was saying, starting at birth, how important it is to read and get those neural cells going, and for the kids to hear the language. And I like to talk to the parents about what kind of books are good, the rhythm and the rhyme, and how that helps their language development. And also just having general conversations. It's all about education. And I found that parents, they want to know. They love it when you help them. No one, every parent just loves their child. And when they see, like you said, Grace, how simple it is, it's not complicated. Oh, you mean if I just say, oh, the sky is blue and look at that yellow balloon, and just things in your everyday conversation. So during the book giveaways, like I said, I'm educating and talking and not just handing the parent the book. I'm also putting my little teacher hat on.
I love it. Thanks. Go ahead, Lisa.
You know, we had, it does come back to relationships and trust. I love the one-on-one model because it works. And we had so much fun last year. We were at fast food restaurants in line. So they were because of COVID, there was no what do they call it?
In-room dining.
In-room dining. There was no in-room dining at McDonald's. So we were paying for kids' meals. Everybody, all kids under 14 got a free kids meal. And we were and it was a long line. So we just spent a lot of time talking with families one-on-one about the importance. The other key, I believe, is getting to families with young children, because young children, I always ask families, what made you start reading to your children? Well, my 2-year-old just kept bothering the crap out of me. Read it. And so, you know, empowering those young children to get excited about books when they're in the library, when they're in the early childhood centers, they come back and parents really do respond.
Thanks, Lisa. A question that I'm just going to ask because it's coming to my mind. So I'm the kid of an immigrant where English was not the first language spoken at home. And so I'm curious about how your efforts with book giveaways also can be inclusive of families where English is not the first language. So if you could say a bit more about that, you know, reflecting on my own story, like my mom cannot read English, very little English, probably first grade level for me. So for her to read a book to me was out of the question. So can you say a bit more around your efforts with book giveaways around how English as a second language, or for those families that are English language learners, are incorporated in?
Absolutely. At one of our largest parent workshops, it was at a predominantly Hispanic and Spanish speaking parent group. We actually conducted the training bilingually, just to make sure that no parent feels like they don't have access to that information or they can't access questions correctly. And talking about like trust, that was one where we were kind of an outside organization being invited to this church family who is very close, and wanted to make sure that the books that we gave away were culturally appropriate. So we found Dr. Seuss books in Spanish. We wanted to make sure that, you know, at least one of the books that was being given out was in Spanish. And thinking too about connecting to resources, I know one of the library's resources is the Dial-A-Story program that I've always referred to people on, and Alan can probably tell you a little bit more about it than I can, but I think the feature is so cool.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yep. Thanks, Grace. Yeah, when our early days in COVID, we were closed. We're a component unit of our school district. The schools were closed, and the question was, how do we do outreach that we haven't been able to do? And we added some Dial-A-Story to our automated attendant. It took some clever recording, but we also had a few stories in Spanish as well, and it made us feel like we were doing something at a time where a lot of organizations could not do anything.
Thanks, Alan. And Candace, I know that Marketplace also has books that are not only in English, but in other languages. Just, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but right off the top of your head, do you know how many languages are represented in the materials, or what some of the common ones are?
So generally, English, Spanish bilingual, or Spanish are most widely available. You know, I mentioned the convening back in May, and I know this is a topic that every organization in that conversation is interested in exploring. How do we connect with more high quality languages in a wider variety, or more high quality books in a wider variety of languages, and helped, you know, kind of pull together and lower the costs for the entire social sector there. We also have a burgeoning partnership with Room to Read, who has incredible books in multiple languages. And another sneak preview for you guys, get registered soon. In late August, early September, maybe, we'll be sending out notification. We're working with them to make tens of thousands of books available in Dari and Pashto. So for organizations serving refugee communities right now, that's going to be a really valuable resource.
Fantastic. Thank you, Candace.
And
I do
May I say
wanna-
one more thing?
Yeah, go
Malai,
ahead, Linda. Yeah,
about
for
our
it.
bag of 25 books? We get donations from the community, and we are getting several Spanish language books in our collection. And we do have a Spanish community around here that I intend to have a book giveaway with. But I just want to mention, I'm not afraid to put a Spanish language book in my bag with the other English books, because I think that could spark curiosity
Yes.
with a family or a kid. Oh, wow, this doesn't look like an English word. I'm curious. I want to learn how to understand that language. Oh, this is in Vietnamese. I want to learn how to understand that. So I like expanding a person's horizons on language. So I'll put all kinds of language books in our bags.
That's fantastic. I used to do that too. When I would have book giveaways in the summer, you made me think about that. I had some Spanish books. I think they were from First Book, actually, is where I got those from. And I had kids who would read the Spanish book in front of me, and I wouldn't want to assume that they would just want only the English language book, but I would do the same just to spark that curiosity. And it was remarkable too that some of the kids only wanted the Spanish book, even if they thought that if I thought that English was the one that they wanted, but they always kind of gravitated towards the others as well. That's awesome. I do want to bring Arianne into this conversation with a much broader question about systems change, since this is ultimately what we are driving towards with our understanding of book access, that it is so much more than that. So Arianne, you do lead something that is a really large collaborative around systems change with access. I'm thinking about your pillars, your keys to access. Can you share a little bit about the messaging component for the broader audience around access and how you do that with the messaging? Because I know that collective impact can be a little bit tricky, but like the work that you're doing in Georgia is phenomenal, and you have so many constituents with your group.
Sure, thanks, Malai. So really this framework that was developed, it was developed with hundreds of people at the state and community level to provide that shared language and understanding of what are the conditions that we would see when we're successful. And so the fact that those pillars provide that shared language understanding and a shared sense of urgency was crucial from the beginning. And the point about creating new opportunities for change, because what it does is it really expands the types of partners, because those 4 pillar descriptions really do define something much broader. And so in terms of like the access issue and book access, really today's example of one of the community leaders, in this case, Chattahoochee Valley area in Georgia, is that the so much more comes into play in terms of looking at a mission of a library system and saying, wait a minute, we're not actually meeting our mission. Let's see what's happening. And not only that, you're looking at the fines free from one angle, you're looking at all of these additional outcomes, and then also embedding things like going through the basics, which is really tailored specifically to parents, which is really lovely in terms of the way the design takes place, and really thinking about embedding the basics through the way we want to get books to families. So it becomes another thing. So I guess really the system change is that the idea of having a framework for profound change where we're really thinking about reading in so many ways that we hadn't before. And I guess one other example at kind of a statewide level is we were able to bring together the agencies that are over the summer food programs with the public library service. Those agencies I had actually never connected before, not knowing that they'd have anything in common, but they definitely had the same people in common, people, children, people in general. And so that led to 0 libraries as really sites where summer meals are included, to more than 100 statewide in just a couple of years. And I think it's really what we've seen then is library leaders who were already innovating even more with partners at the community level. And I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, definitely. And just a shout out to Alan, who's in the middle of our Hollywood Square setup representing the library, and his words about Find Free and just really how important that is. And Arianne, your work with getting the whole state involved. I did put a link in the chat about how that is a state initiative, and all of these materials will be shared in the follow-up resources. I see Sierra has just put up the poll, so we would like attendees to please take a moment to do the poll. This helps inform our work for future presentations. So please just take a moment to do that. And Sierra, we have some future sessions that are coming. There's one this afternoon that I want to be sure to flag. If you could go to the slides and we can get those shared out. Thank you. So we do have one coming this afternoon around systems of resilience. It's going to be a really incredible conversation, which does actually dovetail with the work that we're doing here with the systems change component. And then at the end of the month, we have another session about out of school learning and digital initiatives. And I would be remiss to not mention GLR Week. So I'm going to do that now, because GLR Week is incredibly next week. I can't believe it. And with Alan being here, representative of the library, I have to highlight a couple of the sessions that are going to be happening. There is a gratitude session for libraries on Monday, because we know that libraries play such an important role in our GLR network for everything that they do. I'm just kind of talking about what Arianne had mentioned with lunch at the library, free library programs. I know when I was a lead, the library was very instrumental in the work that we did in our community. So that is on Monday. We have sessions all through the week, so I hope that people do check out the website to register. I also want to highlight the session that we have for community coalitions and leads, which is on Thursday. We have a treat that's going to be a breakout room discussion around resilience, and we'll also be sharing, honoring pace setters, finalists who are doing exemplary work, which we have here in the panel. Our team from St. Louis is a finalist for pace setters, so fantastic for you. I want to be sure to highlight that, since you'll be on the stage and being honored in that particular session. So with that, thank you so much to our panelists for a really engaged session around book access and what it means to communities. I'm so grateful for all of you for taking your time and sharing that with us. And for all of you who are in the audience, thank you so much. I'll be sure to get those follow-up materials. There were lots of things shared in the chat, so I will not lose any of that. That's going to be up in the follow-up. And if you are interested in connecting with any of these folks, feel free to reach out to me directly. With that, I end our session today, and I hope to see you again. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.